Welcome to Open Minds. It's the place where I'm trying to uncover and unpack the most controversial topics and the biggest topics of the world through an open mind and genuine curiosity. I'm your host, Christopher Balgren. If you're liking my content, definitely hit that like button, subscribe, tell your friends, tell your family, leave a comment below. I will respond to each and every one of them. I know these topics are huge, but I'm hoping to carve a space where we can explore them together. So the topic today I want to explore is LGBTQ2+ in the classrooms. It's a topic that many parents have questions about, myself included. I'm not a parent, but I'm sure many of you have questions as well. You know, at what age do you start talking to children not only about sex, but gender identity and sexual orientation? When do you start introducing those topics to children? And do you introduce those topics to children? It's a question that many parents have. And many teachers have as well, because they're on the front lines, not only teaching students about this, having questions about the curriculum, and then also they're on the front lines when it comes to parent-teacher interviews. And when we talk about parents having different perspectives and views on this, guess what? It's the teacher that has to hear it. And so it's a question that so many of us have. But an interesting case came out here in Ontario of a teacher who expressed concerns about some of the books that were being included as part of the LGBTQ2+ books in the library of this school. So here in the Kitchener-Waterloo Regional School Board to hear from community after teacher was expelled for stance on LGBTQ2+ books. So in a nutshell, the teacher is Carolyn Brzezinski, who engaged in a presentation on January 17th, 2022 to the Waterloo Region School Board's library review process. Carolyn felt that there were some books that are now available to students that are inappropriate for young readers and gave two specific examples. One was a book about a middle school student who's asexual, and there was another book about a 12-year-old trans boy. During the presentation, Brzezinski was stopped by Waterloo Region District School Board Chair Scott Pietkowski, and trustees voted 5-4 in favor to end the teacher's delegation before she finished. Now, the chair regretted doing this, the chair said, stopping the delegate is something that I never expected or hoped to do as chair, and I hope I don't have to do that again. The school board meetings are now virtual, streamed online, etc. The teacher is now subject of a formal investigation. According to Brzezinski, she was immediately assigned to home pending a formal investigation and banned from contacting colleagues and students. I have been silenced and punished, in Brzezinski's words. Meanwhile, board members have taken to radio, television, social media to grossly misrepresent my remarks. My few comments expressed concerns about age-inappropriate sexual content. I did not and do not question the rights of trans persons to exist in any way. And this, to me, is the crux of the issue that so many of us have, which is we have questions, but when we voice those questions, automatically people think we're transphobic, we're anti-LGBTQ, we're against the idea of LGBTQ in classrooms. But what they're missing is a legitimate concern or question about at what age do you bring up sexual orientation, gender identity for children who are not of adolescent age. Now, the counter to that could be, and I'm just playing devil's advocate here, but the counter could be that there are students who are LGBTQ2+ that currently don't feel safe at home bringing up their sexual orientation or what they presume their sexual orientation to be. You know, maybe they're attracted to the same sex or no sex, etc. They're very concerned about bringing that up at home because they're not engaging in the actions that perhaps their parents want them to engage in, or they don't feel that they fit in that box. And so the school becomes the safe space for them, you know, where they can actually be themselves. They can actually say that, hey, I'm not straight, I'm not heterosexual, or I'm not attracted to girls or guys or boys or whatever. I'm not attracted to anyone. And this teacher or this principal or these school, areas are my safe space for that. But the question becomes, at what point do you involve the parents? And this is very tricky because I think back to school, I grew up in the 90s, and I remember that, we learned about sex in school. We learned about sexually transmitted diseases in school. We learned about a lot of very touchy topics that I never learned at home. And removing school for a second, I don't know if I would ever have that level of knowledge at home, right? So there is that role that school plays when it comes to sex and educating students about sex, especially when it comes to pregnancy and safe sex and, risks involved with unprotected sex, etc. Would many students have that education at home? I venture to guess, I can't say many, but there's a certain percentage that would not. But then there's this philosophical question, right? Of like, well, sexual orientation and gender identity. These are very difficult conversations, and perhaps it is better for the child to navigate that with their parents. And maybe there's this presumption that there's violence at home, etc., and the safe spaces in the schools. Again, I'm just trying to wrap my head around why there is this push to educate children on LGBTQ2+ issues. Okay, so back to the case. So that happened in January 2022. But interestingly enough, the teacher, Carolyn Brzezinski, says that this was cancel culture, emphasized the importance of respectful dialogue. So Brzezinski was removed from a 2022 school board meeting for expressing the age inappropriateness of these certain books, goes to the Ontario Superior Court, and Justice Ramsey decides the following. Actually, before I get there, I will start here. So all of this is available on Carolyn Brzezinski's website, cancelteacher.com. Carolyn files a defamation lawsuit against the Waterloo Region District School Board in April 2022. In September 2023, the board files an anti-SLAPP motion. Now, you might be asking what an anti-SLAPP motion is, and it's strategic lawsuits against public participation, which are lawsuits used by wealthy individuals and corporations to intimidate and silence public critics by forcing them into legal battles they cannot afford until they cease their criticism or opposition. Now, I don't know if that's the intention here, but this is basically what I Googled and found from the Center for Free Expression. So the board files the anti-SLAPP motion in an attempt to have Carolyn's lawsuit dismissed. The board claims they did nothing wrong and that Carolyn was trying to suppress their free speech. After hours of preparing to defend the case, the Ontario Superior Court hears the case on Wednesday, November 22nd, 2023, just a few days ago, and the judge dismisses the motion from the school board. Specifically, Justice Ramsey says, as counsel for the defendants correctly conceded, the Human Rights Code does not prohibit public discussion of issues related to transgenderism or minors and transgenderism. It does not prohibit public discussion of anything. The comments of the board's agents were defamatory. For example, they accused her of breaching the Human Rights Code, questioning the rights of trans persons to exist, and engaging in speech that included hate. She did not do any of those things. In view of the plain words, all of which are recorded, I see no reasonable grounds to believe that the defense of justification will succeed. I see no prospect that the defendant will be able to prove that his statements had a basis in true fact. He said that the plaintiff said things she did not say. Furthermore, by taking the presentation off the website, the corporate defendant prevented members of the public from ascertaining the true facts. It is not a stretch to infer that, realizing that he tried to justify himself with the public by assassinating the plaintiff's character. Okay, so then it gets into character assassination. But I find this really interesting. This is what the judge says right here. I find it regrettable that the defendant who is trying to shut down debate is an arm of the government. Regard for the historical and present plight of the transgendered, as articulated in paragraph 85 of Hansman, does not negate section 2B of the Charter. What happened here should not happen in a democratic society. And I find that so fascinating, that so many of us are concerned about raising these issues because we would be conceived, or we would be, looked at as anti or transphobic, not in support of the LGBTQ community. But having public discourse is so important. There's nothing in the Human Rights Code that prohibits public discourse. And the key crux of this issue is people assume that if you raise concerns about books about transgenderism in school curricula, you are suddenly transphobic, when you are not engaging in robust debate of diverse perspectives. And that, to me, is so interesting that the judge saw that and ruled accordingly. Now, I'm sure there's a lot more legal proceedings that Brzezinski has to go through, but that right there just gives me hope that there is actually an understanding that the protection of our ability to debate things in a very open way must be protected. It's not, we can't criticize the inclusion of books and then be labeled transphobic. That's not how this works. You can't shut someone down. You can't, chop someone off at the knees when they have the right to share their concerns, as uncomfortable as that is. So this is interesting. I'll leave links below. Check it out. But let me know what you think. Do you think the justices' views here are what we need to hear when it comes to free speech? Or do you think this is just, one teacher taking it a bit too far, et cetera, et cetera? I think this is actually a really good sign for our freedom of expression. So many people reach out to me and say they're so concerned about expressing themselves. And I hope this Superior Court Justice ruling can add some meat to bones to people, on the bones of some of these discussions, and say, you might disagree with the inclusion of LGBTQ2+ books in our curriculum, but we need to have a concerted discussion of what that means. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about transphobia and what it actually is, and if this teacher's actions constituted it. In my opinion, no, but I'd love to hear what you think and engage in a robust conversation about this topic. As always, I'll catch you in the next one as I explore more topics that perhaps people don't want to talk about, but I will right here on Open Minds.